Hey everyone, good morning, welcome back to Gwent. My name is Rooster and we're taking a look at budget weather today. So let's hop into a game, let's get a little bit of a feel for the deck, and then we'll take a look at the deck list and, well, explain the cards in a little bit more detail, as well as identify some of the cards that you can skip on early if you want to jump in the deck right away. As well as some of the ways that you can expand the deck later to turn it into a more competitive version of the same idea. So we're up against another Dagon deck here, and that could very well be a consume variant or another weather deck. So what we're looking for here is we're looking to get rid of a foglet immediately. That's the top priority when you're using your mulligans. Second of all, you wish to keep no more than one Wild Hunt Rider, so keep that in mind if we're going to look for additional cards. The rest of the hand looks relatively fine. Fog could be unimpressive if we're facing another weather deck, but that's just the sad truth of the situation. And I think since we drew the Woodland Spirit, I'm throwing away this Fog, well aware of the risk that we could draw into another Wild Hunt Rider. But that's just the risk we're going to have to take. So first priority here is to get a Fog out, because we really don't want to keep a Foglet with our monster passive ability for the next turn. So I like starting with a Woodland Spirit. Could also start with a Fog, could start with, well, basically anything. Oh, and we're up against Wild Hunt. Well, that's not very impressive against our current board, so I'm actually fine with that. I'm going to use a Thunderbolt Potion here, since I think that our wolves, and maybe even our Foglets, will die to the Nithril. Or actually, I'm just going to kill the Nithril. What am I talking about? That's the reason we run an Elser's Thunder in the first place, so that's fine. Got a perfect answer for the Water Hag, for the Crones here. But I'm also okay with taking it a little slower. We can just use the Wild Hunt Riders here and grab the lead back. And the reason I don't like the Thunderbolt Potion is our opponent might just pass, which leaves us with the awkward situation of keeping nothing for the next round. I don't like that. So up against another weather deck, it seems. So that could be a little annoying. At least the Water Hag will be good, so that's something. And I think I like lacerating his Wild Hunt Riders here to avoid him getting value out of a Thunderbolt Potion. If he lacerates us back, then that's a little sucky, unfortunately. Iris is fine. I could actually... I can't kill Iris myself, that's sucky. But we could use the Commander's Horn here, and I kinda like that idea. Just because it gets Iris out of range of any... Actually, yeah, I'm kind of feeling... he doesn't want to kill Iris without first having some Foglets, I think. So what I think we'll do is we'll Thunderbolt Potion on the Wild Hunt Riders here. Because that looks like that's going to be the unit we'll keep for now. Which is good. So he can kill Iris, that's okay. That's okay with me. He gets a buff on his Crones, but that's actually kind of fine because we don't care about the buff on the Crones because we have Water Hag. So that's okay. We could have used the Commander's Horn there to buff the entire melee row, and that could have been correct, but I'm actually kind of okay with how that went. We could go with the Caranth here, that seems a little greedy. Could go with the Ancient Foglet, which is not awful and does give us the immediate lead, so I think I like that option, sure. Mostly because it gives us the immediate lead here. And, while using the Water Hag right here, just it just forces him to use a clear weather effect, which I don't like. Because he has a clear weather effect with this Dagon, so that's not too terribly exciting. I think I'll use the Commander's Horn on the ranged row here and see if he wants to clear weather on that. It's beneficial to use it on a ranged row, mostly because we're keeping the power of the Ancient Foglets for the next turn. I like that. And whenever he wishes to pass, we can just Water Hag and instantly win the round anyway, regardless of the amount of lead he has accrued until then. Ooh, that's nasty. So that might look like... oh, of course. I completely forgot that those guys are not vulnerable to fog anymore. And so did my opponent. We've all been there since the last update. Well, that was a bit of a short game, but it did show you a little bit of the mindset behind the deck, I think. So let's hop into the deck builder and see how the rest of the deck functions. We've really all seen the Weather Monsters deck, so I don't think it needs too much of an additional introduction. And that moment was too hilarious to not include in this video, I think. So what the deck looks like, it's very much a budget version, and I am well aware that there's two routes to take the monster deck. There's also the consume deck. But we're aiming for a weather version here, mostly because the essential cards in weather are actually cheaper than the consume variant, and that's mostly Caranthir, who's to thank for that. So Caranthir and Woodland Spirit are two excellent gold epic cards that are a very good investment for new players. And that's mostly because Woodland Spirit adds an immediate 10 power to the board, as well as a fog effect which summons your foglets from the deck, so it's an additional fog effect without having to run additional fogs, so that's pretty great. Caranthir, also 10 power, spawns Frost. That does mean that you want to be careful with the amount of non-weather resistant units you run in the melee row. So as you can see, we have cut most of them already. The starter monster deck is actually not all that dissimilar from this, but it does include Fiends and I think Golems. Golems are kind of terrible in any sort of weather deck anyway, because they just don't really add enough power. And the Fiends do have the disadvantage that they stack rather poorly with one of the best monster weather cards in Caranthir. So that is why we are running the Wildhunt Warriors. The Wildhunt Riders might be a bit of an awkward investment for a new player, because they are 3 rares. But they are good to pick up every once in a while from a booster. They're relatively common because they are 3 different arts, of course. So it shouldn't be too hard. If you have 2 of them, you can just craft the 3rd one. It's only 80 scraps anyway, and they are pretty essential in getting a consistent hand with a Weather Monster deck. Now, there are 2 different directions you could go after crafting Woodland Spirit and Caranthir, and that is either immediately going for the Crones. The Crones are a very powerful inclusion to even a monsters deck, as you saw our opponent play over there. So that would be my recommendation if you happen to have a lot of scraps, or perhaps if you already have opened one of the Crones in one of your kegs. If you have not, and you just want an immediate power boost to your deck right away, then Geralt Ard is definitely a good card to invest in, because he's also a neutral epic card, so he's pretty great. And he's really effective against 2 of the most popular decks right now. In the Dwarf deck, the Dwarf Scoia'tael one, where you can push all the Mahakam defenders, the resilient guys that stay until the next round. You can push them into the fog, and you're running a nice amount of fog effects in this deck, so he's excellent. And you're also running Rain with the Water Hag and the Dagon. We'll get to Dagon and play later. To make use of Ard, should your opponent invest more heavily in his ranged row. So, excellent card in that aspect. So either go for the Crones first, or grab art and just grab the leader afterwards. So go for Dagon after art, or go for Dagon after crones. And then Dagon adds mostly more consistency to the deck, to be honest. So the main problem with running a deck with foglets is that occasionally you won't have a fog effect, as in a woodland spirit or just a fog in your opener hand, and that means that you're running a very real risk of drawing the foglets in your second turn. And drawing a foglet is basically just drawing a blank, because you expect those foglets to come out whenever you play a fog anyway, and well, that basically just costs you a card. It doesn't cost you a turn, so it's not that disastrous, but you're basically passing a turn, and that feels really bad. So to prevent that, we have Dagon as a leader, and if you don't have a fog in the very first turn, then you will activate Dagon, and you'll spawn that fog, and you'll be happy because you're not drawing those foglets in the second turn. Now the same kind of applies to the Wild Hunt Riders, although they do not get summoned instantly. You have to be aware that sometimes you'll have an opener with 3 foglets and 2 Wild Hunt Riders, and there's no way for you to get rid of all of them. The deck just is a little inconsistent in that aspect, so you'll have some awkward draws in some of your games. If that's not the playstyle you like, then when you add the crones, just remove the foglets. That also frees you up to run Aridin as a leader. That is a valid option. However, I would really recommend just sticking with all 3 of the muster units, because they do add a lot of explosive power to a deck that is otherwise pretty control-ish. So what other cards do we have here? Of course, if you add the crones, remove the Water Hag. The Water Hag is an excellent card, so if you're going without crones for a while, you'll definitely be happy to run her. And the Drowner, kind of the same story, so the crones would replace the Water Hag, the Drowner. And we're running only 3 silvers right now, so most likely would replace a Wild Hunt Warrior, I think. Now, there's a few extra cards here. I'm running double Lacerate right now, mostly because there are a lot of melee row stacking decks out there. So Lacerate is actually pretty useful. It's really good when used against Neckers, so keep that in mind. Thunderbolt Potion is excellent, mostly used on the wolves spawned by Woodland Spirit, used on the Wild Hunt Riders, which are excellent. When using on the foglets, be aware that if your opponent uses Clear Skies, that you'll also use the Thunderbolt buff. So, if possible, avoid using it on the foglets unless absolutely necessary. Do use it on 3 targets whenever available, because getting 12 value out of your Thunderbolt Potion is a pretty big gain. Using Damarichum Bomb mostly to counter gold units, because you're running a lot of weather, so if you Damarichum Bomb a gold unit, then it will drop down to 1 strength, which is also pretty big. Commander's Horn, as you saw, could have provided us with quite a lot of power, since Woodland Spirit plus Wild Hunt Riders plus even some amount of other melee units, like the 2 wolves from Caranthir, actually hounds, not wolves. Anyway, that can be pretty big, so a starter card that is definitely viable in a deck like this. And then also Thunder to get rid of stuff like Nithral that we saw earlier. First Light, mostly an inclusion to filter the deck just a little bit, mostly since we don't run any weather, any non-weather immune units. You won't be using it to clear skies, but getting a random unit out of your deck on demand, it basically gives you an extra chance at getting an Ancient Foglet or a Wild Hunt Warrior. Basically just another buddy to have something to buff, to have something to keep for the next round, which is rather important. Other than that, the deck is relatively standard. So relatively cheap also, because really the only 2 cards that are actually not even these 2 cards are essential to run the deck. You can run this deck pretty bare bones. There's a lot of customization. You don't have to run 2 warriors, you don't have to run 2 ancient foglets, you can run 3 of these. You can run 1 of these. I wouldn't run 3 well-timed warriors because they're rather awkward when your opponent doesn't have too many targets for them. Probably wouldn't run more than 1 drowner unless you've already got Dagon, because you really want those 2 rain effects to make them tick. But otherwise, yeah, deck is pretty straightforward, but very effective and very good as an introduction to the game, so highly recommend it. Hope you'll have fun with it, and hope to see you again soon with another budget deck. Thank you very much for watching.